Dann hat sich der Lichtschein langsam bewegt, vom Fenster geradeauf bis zum Plafond.
The light moved from the window straight up to the ceiling there, and from the ceiling it moved very slowly over to my bed. It stayed there, then it flashed down, straight down to me, to my head. I wanted to turn on the light and say something, but I couldn't make a sound or move. Sleeping and dreaming. Experiences while falling asleep and experience in the land of dreams have always preoccupied, frightened, and sometimes even shaped people's lives. Arthur Schopenhauer called sleep the little brother of death. Psychologists analyze dreams and try to derive encrypted meanings from them. And while in rural areas, back in the 20th century, the fear of spirits who haunt unconscious and unprotected sleepers was widespread, science assumes that dreamt experiences, like any experience, only take place in the brain. But nocturnal events that touch every human being also have a significant, scarcely researched, spiritual component. There are apparently dreams that anticipate events from the future. Dreams that accompany the process of death. Or shared dream experiences that affect two or more people. What can consciousness do while we are sleeping and dreaming? Does a door to an immaterial world of experience open every night? Is there a connection to what awaits people after death?
I had an experience when I was 15 years old, which showed me that my materialistic worldview, which I had had until then, despite my young age, could not be completely right, and that consciousness has the possibility to break through space and time, that it does not go as linearly as I thought, and I've been looking for explanations all my life, and was therefore always interested in consciousness research. I then perceived dreams as the closest way to be able to find out more information about these other realities of perception. And so I was motivated to write a dream diary, which is the first step to improve one's memories of dreams, so that I managed to remember at least 2 or 3 dreams per night.
Dass ich mir wirklich pro Nacht 2, 3 Träume mindestens merken konnte im Laufe der Zeit.
And in the course of these observations, I noticed some significant dreams, which in turn confirmed that the consciousness of human beings is not fully understood, and that there are many more possibilities than we even suspect.
Bestehen, als wir überhaupt ahnen.
In shamanism and in other spiritual traditions, dreams are considered important for inner development. Lucid dreams are seen as an opportunity to connect with another world. In contrast, dream work hardly plays a role in Western culture. But those who make an effort to write a dream diary often experience small miracles.
Denn es waren Phänomene dabei, die präkognitive Träume waren, also auch wiederum.
Among other experiences, I had precognitive dreams in which I dreamed about the future. Often it is through dreams that one gets support for decisions that have to be made. You can even purposefully ask for support before going to sleep. Put it out there that you would like to have an answer to a question. It can take a few weeks, that's true, but I often got answers. I was particularly happy. It was before an operation, when it was suspected that it could be something cancerous. I kept asking in my dreams if I could already get to know the result. And then I was told several times that it was completely harmless. At first, I couldn't believe it, because the biopsy even showed that it was cancerous. But after the operation, it turned out that it was actually harmless. And the dreams kept telling me to stay calm. Everything is okay. It doesn't look bad.
How can one imagine this dream diary? Is it just like a diary, an entry? Do you also document your mood? Or just what you saw, what you experienced?
It is very important in these dream diaries to write down everything as meticulously as possible. Both the mood, how you felt, everything you can remember. This helps to increase your memory of dreams, especially if it is handwritten. Dreams are extremely fleeting. When I started to deal with them, I found myself in the same situation as most adults, that you can't remember anything, or only remember incoherent bits here and there. You have to start to ask yourself, even before you open your eyes in the morning, what did I dream? And then immediately write it down. Dreams can be so fleeting that if you start thinking about what you have to do during the day, right after you wake up, the memories of your dreams already start to disappear. Over time, more of these fragments can be remembered. Then, from these fragments, whole dreams can be remembered. And what I noticed, if you stay with it and continue to practice, then the contents of the dreams become clearer as well. The language, the message becomes clearer. For instance, later on, I dreamt that I met the guardian angel of my son, who told me which talents my son will have, and where I can support him. And such incredible dreams actually only came after years of practice. There are dreams where more interpretation is required. Sometimes you have to leave it be, because you don't know what to do with it all. Then I usually wait until the next evening and ask for clarity. Please give me a new picture, so that I can understand it better. Then something listens to you. Is that the subconscious? Or what is it? Is it a kind of collective consciousness? I guess there are collective consciousness spaces.
Conscious dream work can lead to fascinating experiences. But without this effort, the doors remain closed, or spiritual experiences lead to superstition. In rural areas of Austria for centuries, the fear of the Trud was widespread, a figure that causes paralysis when you fall asleep and braids horses' manes at night in the stable.
In folklore, the Trud is known as a ghostly apparition, as a being that can turn into people, into an animal, or even to a thing. It appears in the night, it causes a nightmarish pressure on the chest.
There used to be a stable in front of my home. Through this figure, I saw the stable. I thought to myself, something like that can't be. I turned away. The next morning, the mane of the horses were braided. Even the hair above the hooves of the horses had been braided. When you're a young boy, as I was at the time, that costs you a lot of nerves. It's a bit spooky, but it happened. Shining lights, transparent figures, paralysis. In the old stories that interest and inspire folk scholars and filmmakers, superstition could be mixed with real spiritual experiences. Because even people who work on lucid dreaming are confronted with such a paralysis that must be overcome. On the way to conscious, limitless dream experiences.
Everything is absolutely clear. It is the highest level of clarity you can have. You know that your body is lying in bed. You know that you have left your body. I always have to do it via a dream helper. You reach a state of vibration. I have to say it's a very unpleasant feeling when you lie in bed and try to stay conscious while the body falls asleep, meaning you go beyond sleep paralysis to a state where the brain gives the body a paralysis so that it does not carry out the movements you make in your dreams. I think that's very unpleasant because you feel that everything is falling asleep. Everything vibrates, it trembles. Most people wake up at this point, but you have to keep at it and bring your consciousness with you into the sleep state.
Every person dreams every night, even if they do not remember it. Especially intense dream phases, the REM phases, where REM stands for rapid eye movement, can be recognized when a person makes jerky eye movements behind their closed eyelids. But why do we dream? Is it just about processing everyday experiences somehow? Does the person encounter only specific aspects of the self? Does the subconscious show itself in symbols and archetypes? Whichever applies, dreams can be connected with extraordinary spiritual experiences. This includes conscious immersion in the past in apparently actually existing worlds. Wolfgang Beltracchi became known worldwide for his signature forgeries. The painter created new works in the style of old masters and sold them as originals. Not even art experts were able to tell the difference. For his work, conscious dreams play a central role because they open the doors to the past for him. For me, it's the case that at night I travel into these times, into my images, and my wife often wakes me up. I move a lot and talk a lot. I don't sleep very deeply. And what annoys me the most is the smell. It often stinks. What I can't stand at all is the smell of porridge. Porridge, I can't bear to smell it anymore. Or shit. If you run around in Paris in the 18th century, it smells like shit.
So it's really time travel.
Sure, I just move in my dreams. I smell it, I hear it, I see it, and I know consciously that I'm dreaming, but that I'm also traveling. It's not that rare. Many people can do that. At least I think so. Psychoanalysts always say that there are quite a few people who can. Maybe it depends on getting older that you go in this other direction more and more. That the dreams are more frequent. That I can shake them off less. That sometimes when I sit in front of the picture, I immerse myself, even here in the studio. My wife already knows that. Then I sit in front of the picture for an hour and don't move anymore. I'm just gone. She knows that about me. That's just the way it is. The gate to the world of dreams and into the past can permanently open up for our daytime consciousness through near-death experiences or similar experiences. It was as if the connection in the brain, in the head or wherever, was unlocked through this intense experience. So that I actually remember every dream, from every night, from that moment on, and don't forget them anymore. My recollection has got a lot better after this experience, as if some blockade has been unlocked. I can say that my grandfather was an adopted child, and we couldn't quite work out where he was from. We were always guessing where he might be from. Then I also had a dream where, in a short scene, I see a soldier picking up his kit, obviously in the First World War. In a second scene, right after that, I see a man who is singing beautifully. I have a sheet of music in front of me, and he's singing beautifully. And in a third scene, I see a group of people, 3 or 4 people, one of whom they called Uncle, who handed over 2 boxes. One box was full of cigars and the other box was full of paper. I then hear this group say, with this money, we can build an 11-story building. I told my father about this. I found a connection through this dream. My grandfather, who was given up for adoption, sang in 2 singing clubs in Essen. He sang beautifully, operas by Verdi and so on. Then I asked, where did they get the money from? My grandfather's parents owned this house, which was very big, in Essen. It wasn't 11 stories high, but 5 stories. I asked him, if your father was an adoptee, where did he get the money to build such a house? He couldn't answer me. I told him about this dream and about this man who handed over the box with the shares, seemingly, and the cigars. He said, that could have been Uncle So-and-so. I described him exactly. Slim, slender, with a beard. And he said, yes, that must be him. I then told him about the soldier. He told me that it was said that his grandfather's father died in the First World War in France. This all happened in one conversation. My father said, this is incredible, but he didn't want to believe it. I had several dreams afterwards where I saw a soldier who died somewhere in France. I don't want to interpret anything, but why did I have these dreams? Then, in one of the dreams, I was invited by a manufacturer. A man who could be the father of my great-grandfather, who obviously had given the money to his unrecognized grandson.
Nicht anerkannten Enkel.
Dreams reveal the secrets of family histories that go back many generations. Time loses its meaning, and not only the past but also the future can become the present in dreams. Some people report so-called precognitive dreams. They dream of events that later actually occur in everyday life.
Did you also have precognitive dreams, where you saw something that would then actually happen in the future?
Yes, unfortunately, that was something unpleasant.
Da war mein Sohn noch klein, also knapp ein Jahr alt.
My son was just a year old, and I saw in a dream that he had a severe injury on his eye. It was swollen shut, green and blue. It looked awful. I woke up and was afraid for weeks because I thought that something might fall on his eye, and I said, "Be careful," because it made me nervous. In the end, a few months later, he was stung close to the eye by a mosquito. His eye was swollen shut, green and blue, just like in the dream. But it was nothing dramatic. After a visit to the doctor and a special cream, it went away. After a few days, I said, I don't want to see anything about my son. No accidents, nothing. I really sent that out, this plea. I don't want to know.
But in the dream, there was only the image, but no further emotion, if it's something serious or not.
No, it was just an image. When I woke up, I was very scared because it looked so awful. I thought, he must have been badly injured. Something must have fallen on his eye. In the end, it was a mosquito bite. So, in the end, I asked not to see things like that because they just make me nervous.
Does it also happen the other way around? That in the dream you have specific feelings of something threatening or something beautiful to come? that then later on was confirmed as such in real life.
It was often the case that I was afraid of something in a dream or in reality, and then I was told in the dream, you don't have to be afraid. Sometimes even by a voice that said, calm down, you don't know what this may be good for. I received such messages. There must be a mechanism behind this that can see the future. Either the subconscious can see physiologically, or the human being has an energetic structure that is still not fully recognized, or there is a higher spiritual level. There are certain clues that point to it, but I can't say whether my consciousness interprets it as a being of light that gives me these messages. My own subconscious is perhaps represented as a being of light. I can't verify that, of course, but what I can confirm on account of these experiences is that there is a level that already knows in advance what will come.
What was really frightening for me at first was that many of these dreams, or these scenes that I dreamt of, which I could always remember the next morning, also came true. Things like a man falling and injuring himself, but not fatally. And 2 days later, I'm standing at the main railway station in Düsseldorf, and a man in front of my eyes falls on the train tracks. And I remember I immediately jumped onto the track with another man and pulled this man off the tracks back up onto the platform. And I kneel over this man, and it is exactly the scene that I had dreamt of 2 days earlier.
Meaning the face, the situation.
The face, the situation, the brown leather jacket, even on which side I kneel over him. And that is something that struck me very much, but which also brought a lot of confusion concerning the worldview I had had so far. Because you believe and learn all your life that time knows a past, a present and a future. And I have to say, unfortunately, ever since then, the event is now a little over 6 years ago, such dreams have regularly arisen that describe things that will happen in the future.
This event in Düsseldorf, was it the first of its kind?
Yes, that was the first, and it is interesting. I dreamt of my parents' house near Hanover, and it was some kind of meaningless scene, a dream, as you know it, without much meaning. And then I heard a noise in this dream, a very loud noise. And then I see this man fall. I don't know this man. I see him lying on his stomach with his face somewhere on the floor. Then I kneel over him. He's wearing a brown leather jacket. I am not a doctor. I didn't examine him, but somehow in these dreams you have this awareness for what actually is. So I knew he had hurt himself a lot, but he hadn't injured himself fatally. He didn't have to be treated. And then this scene was over again. It was maybe a matter of 10 seconds, and some kind of message, just a scene that was presented to me. And when that happened in real life, at first I didn't think of this dream. When I was waiting for my train on this platform, I just saw a man walking past me who was somehow strange, not well on his feet, and suddenly I heard something. I had lost sight of him beforehand, and suddenly I heard this noise. Bam! It was really loud. And then he was actually lying there. I mean, such a platform is relatively high up above the tracks. There was certainly 1.5 meters or more height difference. And then he was lying down there in the tracks. And yes, immediately I put my suitcase aside, jumped down with another man who was also quick on his feet, and then we pulled him out of the tracks together without thinking. I then got some kitchen paper from a food stand close by because he was bleeding very badly. His glasses had fallen off and were broken, and he had fallen hard on his head. And then I actually knelt right on the side above him, and he was exactly on the platform as I saw him in the dream. Some people have affinities to certain events. The author, Günter Sosterich from Vorarlberg, is often accompanied by fires in his precognitive dreams. I have foreseen quite a few fires. There was this dream in which a barn was burning in the centre of Dornbirn, and 4 months later there was a barn burning in the centre of Dornbirn. Exactly what I had dreamt, yes. And another time when I still had my shop. And then my manager came and said, "It must have been very hot for you." And I replied, "What are you talking about?" He then told me that behind the house where our shop was, the old farmhouse had burned down. It had started at 4 o'clock in the morning and then developed into a big fire. And at 12 o'clock, I wrote down a dream. I wrote down the house was ablaze, but I didn't know which house. But then afterwards, I found out which one. For skeptics, such descriptions suggest that the connection between dream content and actual events is constructed in retrospect. Accordingly, everything would be constructed from the brain, and there would be no spiritual space that allows it to immerse itself in the future or the past. But there is another phenomenon, so-called shared dreams, which are experienced by 2 or more people and are therefore suitable for verification.
I then also tried to verify in general how much significance these dreams have, what they actually say about reality. I decided with some friends who either already dealt with dreams or were motivated to do so, that we proceed as follows. Whenever they dream of me, whenever I appear in one of their dreams, they should write it down and call me. I had my own dream diary and could then verify for myself whether we might have had a shared dream experience. This means that both of us experienced the same dream at the same time. Such a phenomenon seems to exist, and we thought, well, we have time, we sleep every night and dream every night. Maybe we can detect something like that. And within 3 or 4 years of doing this intensively, there were 2 very significant shared dream experiences. I had a dream of a girlfriend of mine. I had already noted it down, and just as agreed, she called me to share that I had appeared in her dream. She then told me about the same dream that I already had, but it was not in the same night, but with a little time difference. That means we both had the same dream, me first and later her. And this dream was about a roebuck. We both saw a roebuck being shot down next to us. The dream wasn't nice, so we were worried. I had the dream and she told me about the same things I had seen, a wounded roebuck being shot down. Then I told her I could tell her the date I had had this dream, because I had noted it down. And then I knew, okay, it was a shared dream phenomenon. And it was at the same time precognitive, because it actually happened a few months later. She was visiting me and we went jogging in the evening. And a hunter, we heard an awfully loud gunshot. A hunter had shot down a roebuck, which was running relatively close to us across the field. And we really stood next to the animal and went to the hunter and complained a little, because it had happened so close to us. It scared the dog. So it was a shared dream experience and precognitive. I also had this with a colleague from work. I didn't have much contact with her, but she had also agreed she would contact me when I appeared in one of her dreams. And again, it wasn't the same night, it was delayed. But we had the same dream together. We were in an attic with a long board with roof hatches. And in the back, there was a beautiful bright blue sky. And we had a conversation there. And she told me the same thing later, this attic and this great long board. And we talked there. And that was another example for me that there obviously have to be shared spaces of consciousness, where you even have the same experiences in a dream.
And the communality of the dream was reduced to the fact that it was in this attic and there was a conversation, or were there also shared contents?
There were also shared contents. I could remember the content, and so could she. And we talked about a certain topic together. And that's a colleague I don't have much to do with. You can't say, yes, that's because we talked about this. We didn't even see each other for months at that time, because we were all in home office. It was Corona times. And we suddenly dreamed of each other. And it was the same conversation in the same setting.
And the topic was something that was somehow existentially interesting for you both. Or was it a completely surprising topic?
No, in truth, we talked about the essence of love in this dream. And I wrote it down, and she told me, yes, we talked about love. But she looked at the window, and I could see the blue sky behind her. I actually completed this image for her. It was an old attic with a long board. That's what we both dreamed of, independently of each other.
How has your worldview changed through this dream work? What questions are open now?
The question is, on the one hand, what hears us there? What can give us these great messages? What more possibilities does consciousness have? And what I'm also particularly interested in is if many people really were to deal with it, then I think in the long term our entire worldview would have to change. Because I'm convinced that every person either would have precognitive dreams or shared dreams, or would receive information through dreams that are actually inaccessible. And that's why I would be happy if more people could be motivated for dream work, to be able to better understand the essence of consciousness, perhaps based on dreams.
Many associate dreams, above all, with something mysterious. They fear stressful nightmares, and therefore prefer to leave nocturnal events in the unconscious. Are nightmares a topic in dream work?
During childhood, you usually remember more dreams. And during this time, from childhood to young adulthood, I had relatively often strong nightmares. I always fled, was pursued, there was murder and all sorts of things, really dramatic and terrible. And everyone who has had nightmares already knows how that feels. You can be in terrible panic in a dream. All emotions are perceived particularly strong in a dream, somehow even stronger than in the body. You know it, for instance, from when you fall in a dream. It's very intense. And a friend gave me a tip. I was a young adult, and she said, "Why do you always run away? Ask these people who they are and what they stand for." And of course, I couldn't do it right away, because you need a certain degree of clarity. You have to remember in a dream that you have this in mind. The more unconscious you are in a dream, the less possibilities you have to act. You're just on the run. But at some point, I succeeded and turned to the people and said, "Why am I running away from you? What do you stand for?" And then they answered, "Yes, we're your fears." I talked to them, my fears of this and that and that. And then we reconciled in a dream. And it never happened again. And I have to say, now that I've restarted my dream work in adulthood, I hardly ever have nightmares. They come to me very, very rarely. I can't even remember. They are probably less than 5% of my dreams.
Are there other developments as a result of your dream work? Is something possible for you now that was not possible at the beginning? Is there a learning process?
There are great learning processes taking place. It's so interesting. You start from zero dream memories, to fragments, to logical gibberish, to clearer dreams. And then you suddenly have very clear dreams, even with real lucid dreaming, in which you are aware that you are dreaming. And when these stages are reached, or the dreams already have a certain substance and clarity, then it started that I was taught in my dreams. I was taught in my dreams how I could fly better, which emotions are necessary for this. I have found that in a dream, when you fly freely, certain emotions are hindering. When you're afraid, you immediately fall down. So trust, generally a basic sense of trust, are necessary, and these are the mechanisms. I'm being trained to fly in the dream, but in fact my subconscious also trains my calmness at the same time. I was also tested. I was pushed down a big tower, and a voice told me to relax, to be able to let go. And these are things that have repeatedly happened in dreams. Interestingly, not only with me. If you compare dream diaries and look at forums, talk to other people, they experience the same training processes that I also experienced after a certain stage. And this training also changes things for your everyday life, because you're trained to let go in certain situations.
Can you say for you, the whole frame of reference of life has expanded in the sense that there is not only this reality of waking consciousness, but that we are embedded in something bigger?
That can definitely be expressed in this way. I would definitely confirm that. You always have to incorporate dreams in your life so that you can find access to them. I try to give dreams a place in my life. Yes, I have two experiential realities. The here and now is not the only reality. It is not worth more than the dream reality. Both want to tell me something, and I try to incorporate both into a whole.
If you experience dreams very realistically, what are the main differences to conscious experiences in everyday life?
It depends on the type of dream. In an ordinary dream, there's less stability. Certain objects do not correspond to what they look like in reality. These are things you recognize when you train your critical consciousness and always ask yourself, where was I just now? Could I be in a dream? What does the clock look like? The clock does not have 3, but sometimes 5 hands in a dream. There is also the famous trick from Carlos Castaneda that was already used by shamans and indigenous people to control his own hand. Your hand does not have 5 fingers in a dream. These are the points where critical consciousness jumps in and says, I'm dreaming right now. Then it may be that you enter a lucid dream. This happens quite suddenly. When you have recognized this and the critical consciousness switches on within the dream image changes. Then it is very difficult to distinguish the dream from reality. In a lucid dream, things are much more similar to reality. You can hardly detect errors. It is much more stable. The street remains as it is. There is not suddenly a house more or less as it can occur in an ordinary dream. I even started looking at the environment, a technique I adopted from Jürgen Ziewe. I examined everything closely and noticed that I was in a dream, that I was in another reality. Then I explored the room I was in. This room had wallpaper, a patterned wallpaper. I touched the surface and there was nothing to distinguish. I even saw individual errors, aging errors and small cracks in the wallpaper. I thought, wow, if my brain actually creates this, then it creates it in such a detailed way that I can no longer say what happens when I'm a mother. Is that not also a kind of creation? Just in even higher terms of stability? The OBE is then the highest level of a dream, that in my experience can barely be distinguished from reality anymore. that can only be recognized by the things that can happen there but otherwise not.
OBE, out-of-body experiences, close the circle from conscious dreaming to death research, because near-death experiencers also report experiences outside the body.
Out-of-body experiences imply that you are traveling without a body and actually explore reality. Have you also had such experience, and were you in some cases able to verify whether you were really there or not?
There are experiments. People do this when they have their first OBE and see themselves in the room. The funny thing is that some things actually happen like this, but other things are different. It may be a mixture. If you, for instance, look out the window and see that the neighbor is driving away with his car and ask him whether he left around that time, unusually early that day, other things that certainly could not be so were already there in the OBE. The picture was missing, and instead there was a mirror in the room where there normally was a picture. I can only say from my experience that certain things were right. I could talk to my neighbor who actually left around that time with the car, but where I saw the mirror, there's actually a picture. So these things are mixed up somehow. You can't be 100% sure that everything you experience in an OBE corresponds to reality. Some elements very well.
Do you think there are limits to out-of-body experiences? Can you also travel to the moon, to Venus?
I don't think there are any limits at all. It's actually often about focusing on something, a place, and then getting there and being able to get there. And what also has to be said is that sometimes you're drawn to places without a choice. That was my experience with the OBE, that I had the opportunity to travel via certain tunnels, via dimensional gates, if you will. That is the big difference for me between a dream, a lucid dream, and an OBE. OBEs were less driven by my subconscious. I didn't get any tips or anything like that, but I was simply allowed to travel. It was like a journey to different places and different situations. It didn't have anything to do with me.
Do you have any goals for your dream work? Or do you just say to yourself, let's see what happens?
I do have different spiritual goals and also personal goals. I always try to verify. I want to know more about dream people. I like to talk to them. I want to know how far their logical thinking is. I've already tried to give them calculation tasks. I've tried to see if they speak other languages. I've noticed that it's always more difficult with ordinary dreams. I remember OBEs and lucid dreams better, but with ordinary dreams, I've tried to translate it. I always try to verify it for myself. Spiritual goals are that I start meditating in a lucid dream and see what happens. What other levels are there? In a lucid dream, I can do whatever I want. Then I sit down in a dream and meditate and see what happens. When I have the opportunity to meet light beings, which sometimes happens, I try to find out what I can. What tips do they have? What do they say about humanity? What is our situation?
These dream people, what kind of relationships do you have to them?
That is very interesting. I have dealt with this question more and more. There are known people, people you know, and people you have never seen in your whole life or can't remember consciously. Maybe you've perceived them at some point and they are interpreted this way. I'm sure there are some who do not exist at all. Sometimes you find yourself in levels that have nothing to do with reality and the world. Sometimes you meet people in your dream whom you seem to know in your dream. Emotions come up. I have met friends there and hugged them very warmly. When I woke up, I thought, who was that? But in my dream, when I hugged them, I had memories of what I had already experienced that had nothing to do with my life. I also wrote down these memories because I was able to remember myself together with the dream person, but also in pictures of past memories with the dream person. It was like a second level of memory. That was somehow interesting. They can also act as helpers, but they can also try to distract you from becoming lucid. They distract you on purpose. Then there are dream people whom I sometimes think are a real entity. They behave differently. Then there are these dream people when you are in an ordinary dream state, where I think to myself, no, that's just a construct. When you ask them something, they can give you fewer answers and they are less stable, and sometimes here and sometimes there. Then there are dream people who are absolutely stable, and you can have long conversations with them. That's why I think it's always a blurring area between your own experience, your subconscious, even collective spaces of consciousness, as well as actual possibly spiritual entities. That is all mixed up. To distinguish that, I think, takes a lifetime.
And the communication itself, is it language? Is it something completely different?
Communication works via speech, but also telepathically. I've noticed that when I meet people or dream people who have died, that at the beginning, shortly after their death, they still talk in words. And then I meet them again later when they have died a long time ago. Then they no longer speak. They stop speaking at some point. I've experienced that they smile and that you understand each other internally, so they no longer use language.
Do dream people also have names?
Yes, dream people often introduce themselves with names. And some, as I said, also have a real identity. And I've had funny experiences with dream people. Once I reached a lucid state. I was in a lucid dream, and I tried to convince the dream person that I was dreaming them. I explained I was having a lucid dream, and they don't really exist. Don't you know that you're only being dreamed of by me? And the dream person answered, no, it's the other way around, because I'm a baker, and I just lay down, and now I'm lucid myself, and I'm dreaming of you. And it went back and forth. And the dream person actually said, besides, you just flew, and I can't do that. You must be the dream person. That was kind of funny. And you always have such experiences when you have a lucid dream and test such things.
How do you experience yourself in a dream? Is there an I?
Most of the time I'm me, the person I am now in reality, but not always. I have also been someone completely different. I look different. I was also in a different time, once far into the future. I was a completely different person, a woman who looked completely different, had a different child, had a different life.
Was that connected with special experiences, with special insights, with a meaning that became clear afterwards?
I actually saw an excerpt like a day in the life of this person. It may not have been very unimportant because this person was angry about things that she should not have been angry about. An airplane was delayed. It looked very different. It was more of a flight object. And she always seemed to be angry about such things, about small everyday mishaps. And on that day, I experienced it as her. She came to the conclusion that it wasn't that bad, and that life is actually quite beautiful.
Dreams accompany human life. They show that there is also consciousness during sleep. Do they actually lead to experiences beyond space and time, into an immaterial reality, as it is also experienced by near-death experiences? Deathbed visions and after-death contacts also point to spaces or worlds that are not subject to physical restrictions and often show themselves in dreams. Perhaps dream experiences will forever elude logical explanatory attempts. And sleep, as the little brother of death, will remain as mysterious as his big brother. That's how we'll attack today. We take a knife and lay it in the middle of a cloth. Then we wrap it up nicely and say 3 times, "Where is the truth? Where is the truth? Where is the truth?" We unwrap the cloth again and see if we caught her. We didn't catch her. The knife is still there.